Okay, so picture this. It's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, no.
You have a huge presentation at work tomorrow. You know you should be asleep. But instead, you're just lying there in the dark, and the only light in the room is the blue glow from your phone. And you are glued to a video on an app, maybe ReelShort or TikTok.
We've all been there. It is the modern condition, isn't it? The doom scroll.
But here's the thing. You're not watching the news. You're not even watching a cat video. You're watching the scene where a humble peasant dad in a straw hat is getting screamed at by some snobby high society duke. The duke calls him a toilet cleaner. He humiliates him. But you, the viewer, you know the truth.
You're in on the secret.
Exactly. You know this dad is actually the Archmage, the most powerful being in history, and in about, 45 seconds, he is going to absolutely destroy this duke.
And you physically cannot look away. You need to see it happen.
I need the revenge, I need the reveal. And then before I know it, I've watched 40 episodes. But here's the kicker. Each episode was only 90 seconds long.
You have fallen headfirst into the vertical microdrama vortex.
I certainly have. And that is exactly what we're unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into this exploding world of vertical microdramas. You know, the shows filmed in that 9.16 portrait mode, made for mobile.
Where a whole season is like 60 to 100 episodes, but the total runtime is just the length of a single movie.
Exactly.
It's a fascinating phenomenon. And our mission today is really to decode the technical and narrative shift that's required to make these.
Yep.
Because I think a lot of people just dismiss it. They call it short TV or, trashy content.
Right.
But when you look at the stack of research we have, it's actually completely different language. We are looking at a radical transition from traditional Hollywood storytelling, slow burns, wide shots, to this high-intensity climax-style world.
And we have a massive stack of sources to get through. We've got course materials from the Romance Right Club. We have industry breakdowns from Inktip and Stage 32, and some really dense academic papers on something called environmental blurring.
Which sounds very sci-fi, but it explains so much about why these videos look the way they do. Plus, we have a thesis analyzing the structure of Jaws.
Yeah.
Jaws, and how it surprisingly relates to TikTok dramas. And, of course, actual transcripts from that hit you mentioned, My Farmer Dad is Secretly an Archmage.
I am so excited to talk about Farmer Dad. But okay, let's start with the basics. The format itself, the 9.16 revolution, why does the shape of the screen change the story so much?
It changes everything.
Yeah.
The most critical thing to understand, and this is from Inktip and Stage 32, is that this is a portrait medium.
Yeah.
Which, sounds obvious. You hold your phone vertically.
Of course.
But the narrative implications are huge. Think about traditional cinema. The screen is horizontal. That allows for the wide shot. You can show a lone cowboy in a vast desert to communicate isolation.
Right, you get the landscape, you see where the character fits in their world, you're establishing the world.
Exactly. But in a vertical drama, you lose the landscape.
Yeah.
You physically cannot fit the desert in the frame. The cowboy would be a tiny dot. And this leads to that concept from the Communication University of China paper, environmental blurring.
Environmental blurring. Okay, break that down. Is that just a fancy way of saying the background is out of focus?
In a practical sense, yes. They often use a shallow depth of field. But narratively, it means the environment becomes, almost irrelevant. Because the vertical frame limits the background, the focus shifts 100% to the characters. The world blurs away.
Which makes so much sense from a production standpoint. I mean, I'm looking at this and thinking, I don't need a huge budget for a stadium scene. I don't need to dress a massive set. I just need two people arguing at a kitchen table.
Precisely. And the Inktip article mentions this. The vertical frame loves faces and hands. It creates this forced intimacy. You're holding these actors in your palm, just inches from your face. So the theory suggests that because we can't see the world, the entire story has to be carried by the micro-expressions on their faces. The action isn't a car chase. The action is an eyebrow raise.
That brings up a really interesting point from that CUC paper about cast aesthetics. Did you see that bit about the internet celebrity look?
I did. It noted that the actors often have this very specific, polished look. Pale skin, certain makeup styles. It mimics the influencer aesthetic of the platform.
So the fiction has to blend in with the reality of the feed.
Right. They don't look like gritty character actors. They look like the filters users apply to themselves.
That is wild. So the medium shapes the message and the face filter shapes the casting. The line between a story and a post is just gone.
That is the goal. Immersion.
Okay, so we've got the visual constraint. We're zoomed in. The background's gone. Now let's talk about the writing, because this is where I think traditional writers, people who love that three-act structure, get their hearts broken.
It is. It's a painful transition. It requires unlearning almost everything you've been taught.
We have to talk about the first 3 seconds. This rule from Ammon Lyle at stage 32. You don't have minutes to set the scene. You have 3 seconds.
And think about how jarring that is. In a traditional film, you have what we call leather-on-leather time. You open with a drone shot of a city, cut to a car driving, you see the protagonist park, walk into a building.
In the vertical world, swipe, gone. I'm bored before he even parks the car.
Lyle argues you have to cut all that transit time. The example he gives is perfect. Instead of Sarah walking her dog, the vertical script starts with, Sarah's phone buzzes, text message, you have 10 minutes before everything blows up.
Immediate stakes. You just drop the viewer right into the fire.
You're bypassing the setup entirely and going straight to the inciting incident.
But this leads to that big debate in our sources about structure, the traditional view versus this new vertical view. And this is where Jaws comes in, I guess.
Right. So to understand what we're changing, you have to look at the traditional model. We have this thesis on Frank Daniels' sequence approach.
Yeah.
Classic screenwriting theory. It looks at a movie like Jaws. A 2-hour movie is divided into 3 acts, and those acts are broken into maybe 8 sequences. Each one is about 10 to 15 minutes long.
So in Jaws, a sequence would be like, the shark attacks the beach, then the fallout, then the town meeting. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Roughly, yes.
Yeah.
It's a sustained narrative arc. It builds slowly. You have time to breathe for characters to discuss what just happened.
And the vertical view just says, take those 8 sequences and smash them with a hammer.
Essentially, this is the decompose and distill method. You take those long sequences and you chop them into microbeats. Inktip has a rule for this. 1 beat per episode.
1 beat per episode? That sounds incredibly restrictive.
It's discipline. It means every 2-minute chunk has to have a clear turn. A proposal, then a hesitation. Cut. A text message reveals a secret. Cut. You can't just have a scene that's character development.
Right.
If the character isn't reacting to new information or a new threat, the scene is dead.
Isabel Dran from Screenwriting Staffing talks about this. She says writers have to unlearn the slow burn. You're basically jumping into a movie halfway through.
It's the death of exposition. In traditional media, we spend Act 1 learning who people are. In vertical media, we learn who they are by who's slapping them in the face in the first 10 seconds.
And we can't forget the commercial reason for all this. It isn't just an artistic choice. It's the cliffhanger economy.
That is the perfect term for it.
Because the business model, and this is so crucial, is that you get maybe 5 or 10 episodes for free, and then paywall, you have to pay coins to unlock the next minute of the story.
So the writing has to physically compel you to pay. The sources list the types of buttons you need to end on. A revelation, a reversal, a deadline.
You can't just end because the conversation is over.
Never. You have to end because someone just pulled a gun or a paternity test came back negative. The button is the hand reaching for your wallet.
It's weaponized curiosity.
It is, and it works.
Which is the perfect transition to our case study. Because if there is one show that masters the cliffhanger economy and the climax style opening, it's My Farmer Dad is Secretly an Archmage.
I have the transcript right here. It is, frankly, it's a masterclass in efficiency and absurdity.
Okay, so let's unpack the setup. We have Eden Thorne, looks like a peasant dad, but really he's the oracle mentor, most powerful mage in history. Then you have his son, Garrett, a knight paramount who somehow doesn't know his dad's a wizard, and the villain, Duke Killiam.
And the conflict engine is just incredible. It starts immediately. The Duke is insulting the dad, calls him a filthy peasant, a toilet cleaner. There's no hello, no preamble, just immediate status conflict.
And the props. This killed me. The dad is using a straw to drink, but the transcript says the straw is actually the Elf King's legendary sword in disguise. And he's eating a piece of fruit the Duke thinks is a rotten pumpkin, but it's actually a divine fruit.
It sounds absurd, and it's funny. But let's look at this through the lens of that academic paper. They talk about E.M. Forster's theory of flat versus round characters.
Okay, refresh my memory on Forster.
A round character is complex. They have contradictions, they grow slowly, they surprise you. Says Walter White. A flat character represents a single quality. They're static. They are the snob, the hero, the villain.
And in Farmer Dad, these characters are flat as a pancake.
They have to be. The Duke is purely the snob. The dad is the secret hero. The CUC paper argues that because the episodes are so short, there's no time for round complexity. If the Duke had some backstory about a difficult childhood.
It would slow down the dopamine hit.
But
We don't want to understand the Duke. We want to see him get punched.
Exactly. The paper calls this the refresh point, or the explosive point. By making the characters flat archetypes, the audience instantly recognizes the dynamic. Snob versus peasant. We know who to hate. And when the dad reviews his power, it provides instant gratification.
It creates that feeling of vindication. Like, I knew he was special, and now you look like an idiot.
And that emotion vindication is the engine of the entire series. It's not about growth. It's about winning.
Which is interesting because when you look at the commercial landscape, producers are desperate for that specific feeling.
They are. That interview with Isabel Drian highlights this. It's about efficiency. Low budget, fast turnaround, but also the demographic. She notes that women aged 20 to 55 are a huge part of this audience.
Which explains the trending genres we saw in the Romance Write Club's source. I mean, you've got courses on writing sweet versus writing dirty.
And the tropes. Fated mates, secret billionaires, enemies to lovers. These all rely heavily on that flat archetype structure. The secret billionaire is just the farmer dad archetype, but, in a suit.
It's the same reveal mechanic. You thought I was poor, but I actually own the company.
Precisely. It's about status reversal. It taps into a deep desire to be secretly powerful or to be chosen by the most powerful person in the room.
And we also saw revenge thrillers as a major genre.
The structure there is so simple, according to Inktip. You need a simple want, usually justice, and then you need fresh obstacles every 2 minutes.
And a ticking clock.
Always a ticking clock. If there isn't a timer counting down, the audience might realize they have laundry to do.
The CUC paper calls this whole medium electronic snack food.
It does, and I think that label sticks. Kind of implies it's empty calories.
They talk about the psychology of flow, how it's designed for fragmented time-like commuting or waiting in line. But the irony is, people end up watching for hours. You eat the whole bag of chips when you only meant to have one.
Well, this is where I want to push back a little on the idea that this is all just trash. We have a fascinating source here from Scriptic that discusses Aristotle's Poetics.
Bringing Aristotle into a conversation about Farmer Dad. Okay, this is why I love these deep dives. Go on.
Bear with me. So Aristotle argues that story is about change through adversity and catharsis. Catharsis is the purgation of emotion, right? You watch a tragedy, you feel the emotions, and you're cleansed.
Okay, yeah, I remember that from English class.
In a 2-hour movie, that catharsis happens at the very end. You wait 2 hours for the release. In a vertical drama, the argument is that they're still adhering to Aristotle, but they are microdosing the catharsis.
Microdosing catharsis, that's a brilliant concept.
Isn't it? You get the purgation of emotion every 90 seconds instead of waiting 2 hours. When the Duke gets humiliated, catharsis. When the secret is revealed, catharsis.
So the trashy reputation comes from the speed and the lack of nuance, but the fundamental mechanics, emotional release, are purely Aristotelian. It's just sped up.
Exactly. It's not a lack of structure. It's hyperstructure. It's condensed. It's like high fructose corn syrup storytelling. It's not necessarily good for you in large doses, but it hits the same receptors.
So for any writers listening or just people who want to understand how this stuff is engineered to hack their brains, what's the practical advice? How do you write the next Farmer Dad?
We have some great tips from Isabel Drian and the Inktip articles. The number one tip, do not slice up a feature script.
It doesn't work.
It fails completely.
Yeah.
You can't just take a slow burn thriller and chop it into 2-minute segments. You have to write for the vertical beat. You have to engineer the cliffhanger into the DNA of the scene, not just find a place to cut.
Right.
If you do that, you just have a disjointed movie, not a series.
Tip number 2 was think in portrait.
Yes, this goes back to our visual constraints.
Right.
Focus on dialogue and faces. No complex blocking. If your script calls for a high-speed car chase with 5 vehicles and a helicopter, you're writing for the wrong medium.
You write a scene where 2 people are trapped in a car discussing the chase.
Exactly. It's cheaper and keeps the focus on the faces, which is what the format demands anyway.
And then there's the advice from Enos Johnson at the Romance Write Club about universal fantasies.
This is key. She argues that tapping into these really deep-seated desires to be powerful, to be loved by the rich CEO, to be secretly special is more important than subtle nuance. You're selling a fantasy.
Don't worry if it feels cliche.
The cliche is the point. The cliche is the comfort food.
It really feels like the Wild West right now for writers.
It is. The barrier to entry is lower. You can get produced quickly. But, as the experts note, The pay varies wildly. It's a testing ground. But if you can master that hook, you can find a huge audience overnight.
So let's zoom out a bit. We've unpacked the straw sword, the environmental blurring, the Aristotelian microdoses. What does this all mean for us, the people holding the phones?
To me, it signifies a shift in attention itself. Vertical microdramas are a distinct medium with their own grammar. They are a new evolution of storytelling, designed for a very specific technological environment.
It feels like we're moving from content consumption to dopamine management.
That is a very apt way to put it. We're self-medicating with story, regulating our mood in 90-second bursts.
And even if you never write one of these, understanding this helps you understand why you can't put your phone down at 2 a.m. You're not just weak-willed. You are being targeted by a very sophisticated engine of hooks and cliffs and micro-catharsis.
It raises a pretty important question for the future of storytelling, doesn't it?
Here is where it gets really interesting.
If we can tell an entire hero's journey, from peasant to archmage, in 2-minute increments, are we evolving storytelling to be more efficient? Are we just stripping away the fat to get to the emotional core? Or are we just training our brains to reject any story that doesn't explode in the first 3 seconds?
That's a scary thought. Are we losing the patience for the slow burn?
I do worry about that. If we train ourselves to only accept the climax-style opening, we lose the ability to appreciate the build-up. And sometimes the build-up is where the real humanity is. You don't get the Godfather in 9.16 portrait mode. You lose all that nuance.
Something to think about the next time you're scrolling and you see a CEO disguised as a janitor getting yelled at.
Indeed. Enjoy the dopamine, but maybe watch a 2-hour movie once in a while. Just to keep your attention span intact.
Thanks for diving in with us. Look at your phone differently today. We'll see you on the next deep dive.